Everyone knows that Adobe Illustrator is the most powerful vector-based drawing software on the planet, but there are things about this venerable old program that drive me crazy, which is why today I'm going to share with you 10 things I hate about Illustrator. One's a bug, one's a sin of omission, but the others are by design deeply flawed features. Are you as excited as I am? Let's get started. At number 10, we have what I believe to be the worst tool in all of Illustrator, and that is the knife tool. Its job is to cut a path into pieces, which is a worthy goal. It just doesn't happen to do so well at all. In fact, it is just a bumbling fool of a tool. And so what I'm going to do is bring up these two circles right here. And let's say I want to take them and turn them into kind of choppy Pac-Man faces, let's say. And so what I'm going to do is switch over to the eraser tool, click and hold, and grab the knife tool. And so notice that the circle is selected. That's important. And now I'll just drag, I'll free form. And notice just what a precision tool this is. It behaves like, you see the path wiggling around? It behaves like the pencil tool, the bad old pencil tool of the old days. And now I'll just kind of give it some just teeth, let's say. And about here, I can just kind of close the path. It doesn't matter. Now I'll press the V key to switch to the black arrow tool because both of the paths are selected, and so I'll click off of them and then click on this guy and just drag it away. You can see that we have fine work of art. I'm so proud. All right, well, let's say you want a constraint out of this tool. I'll go ahead and grab the knife tool once again, which does not have a keyboard shortcut, which is kind of a good thing. It would be wasted on it. I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, and with that key down, you don't have to hold it down, actually. Well, you'll get a straight segment. Notice that. And just go ahead and try to align it with the center. For example, the center point right there. Notice I'm not getting any indication of a snap. I'm not seeing a white arrowhead, and I'm not seeing the word center. My smart guides are turned on, so I should see the word center at this point. But the problem is that the saw tool right here doesn't respect snapping of any kind. It doesn't snap at all. And so also, I just kind of cut into the path outline. Let's say I want to cut an area out now. If I want another straight line, you can only do one at a time. I would Alt or Option drag again. And I'm trying to do a good job, folks. It's just there is no snapping, so I don't know if this is going to work out or not. I'll press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool, and I'll click. And no, I selected everything, didn't I? I'll press the A key so we can see what we've got here. I'll just grab this anchor point right here, and it's this. Notice that. And then we have this right here. And so then we have, and we got this. And so I've just mangled this path outline. I haven't done anything useful at all. All right, I'll just undo those changes. It is possible, by the way, to get it right, but I'm not going to waste your time. You can try it out if you want. All right, one more thing. Let's say I just want two half circles. One top half, one bottom half. So I want to draw a horizontal line in between the two of them. Grab the knife tool once again. This time, as you Alt drag or Option drag on the Mac, you would press the Shift key in order to constrain the angle of that drag like so. I don't know why you have to have the Alt key down to do this, but Shift should be enough given the rules of Illustrator. But anyway, I'll go ahead and release that. There it is. Press the V key, click off, click on this guy, and drag it down. And let's see, I'll press the A key, that is to grab the white arrow tool. And let's see if I got it, if I nailed those anchor points. I did not at all. Well, so what is the solution? Well, I'll press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool. Actually, I don't need to. This solution doesn't require a circle to be selected at all. What I'll do instead is I'll switch to the pen tool, which works just great, right? And I'll click over here in order to set an anchor point, and then there it is. There's the center of the shape. Smart guides are turned on, so Illustrator knows what to do. This tool is much older than the knife tool, by the way, and it behaves itself, of course. And now I don't even need to complete the shape. Don't worry about it. Don't select the rear circle. That'll mess things up. Just go to the object menu. You can still have a live path outline going on. Drop down to path and then choose this guy, divide objects below. Same version of the software. Illustrator 6 is when this command came out, just like the knife tool, but it works is the advantage. And now I'll press the V key, click off, click on this guy, drag it out. You can see we have a nicely rendered wedge, just like you would think. What if I want chompy teeth? Well, then I'll just go ahead. Well, then I'll grab the pen tool, of course, and I'll click right here, and I'll just go ahead and draw my little teeth like so. And I can snap into alignment with the center, and then I'll draw a couple more teeth like so. And just make sure you get out of there like I am right now. Just make sure you click to get outside of the circle. Then return to the object menu, choose path. You got to manually do this part and choose divide objects below. And it does it. Press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool and drag this area out and get rid of it. And so there's your solution. I'm slapping my head. Of course, I'll just go ahead and click on this half circle to select it, and I'll get the knife tool. Surely you can click with the knife tool. Nope, you can't. In fact, I've shown you everything you can do with the worst tool in all of Illustrator, this guy right here, the knife tool. All right, here at number 9, I have a bug. I believe it to be a bug anyway, and it only affects one platform, which is why I'm going to start things off on a light note with a tip that I think all of you will find helpful. I'll go out to the view menu and I'll choose rulers, and then I'll choose this guy, show rulers. And that will bring up the rulers. Now, you can drag from either ruler to create a guideline, but did you know you can create 2 opposing guidelines at the same time by pressing the Control key, Command key on the Mac, and dragging from this point right here, the intersection of the 2 rulers in the top left corner, and then releasing. And notice, I now end up with a vertical and horizontal guide with 1 drag. Isn't that awesome? Here's the part that isn't awesome. Why are these rulers so incredibly microscopic? This is only an issue on Windows. You people working on the Mac, your rulers are just fine, but this is also just an Illustrator problem. It's not a problem in InDesign or Photoshop or anything else, and it just makes me apoplectic, as you can tell. I mean, yes, I can kind of read those values right there, but they don't have to be so tiny. Why is this? People are railing against this, have been. It's not like a new trend or anything. This has been people complaining about this for like years upon years upon years. And in all these forums, I don't even see an Adobe rep saying, oh yeah, we know that's a problem, we'll get to it. It's just silence. I think we deserve for this problem to be taken care of. Okay, I gotta settle down, but truth is, what you've seen and what you're about to see, they aren't the only things that I hate about Illustrator. For example, I hate the fact that so many settings are unique to the active document. Swatches, brushes, the transparency checkerboard pattern, the layers panel thumbnail sizes are saved with the local document. And so how do you get these very basic settings to transfer from one document to the next? Watch my Patreon and find out at patreon.com/steeknow. And now, back to eating my big plate of hate. If you saw my 10 things I hate about Photoshop, and I hope you did, then you may recall that I devoted number 8 to the eraser icon, which used to be great and now it's not, which is why I'm devoting number 8 on this list to the pen and arrow cursors, which similarly used to be great and now they're not. To wit, notice right here the classic pen tool cursor. Entirely unambiguous. It's obviously a pen nib made of some sort of metal alloy, and unlike the knife tool, which has to tell us where the hotspot is, the pen tool makes it obvious it's the tip of the darn tool. Now, of course, things went flat design, that is, a few years back. But for some reason, as a result, we were given this little charred stub of a thing right here, which, rendered to scale, looks like this. So not only is it flat, it's also small and blunted. Notice the tip is rounded off. Is that to make us think that our path outlines are going to be smoother going forward? I have another theory. Maybe things are moving in a more mammalian direction. Now, where the arrow tool is concerned, it's more of a mystery. It used to look like this, which is fine. It's an arrow, obviously. Now it looks like this. So the stem got lobbed off. Why in the world did that happen? Well, my mammalian brain imagines another reason for this. I think it's because Adobe is trying in no unsubtle terms to get us to stop calling these things the arrow tools and call them their legal names, the selection tool and the direct selection tool, even though this guy's got a keyboard shortcut of A for arrow and this one has a shortcut of V for upside down arrow. The problem is there's just no precedent for that. There's no other tools that are so highfalutin. We don't call this thing the point-for-point drawing tool. We call it the pen tool because it's a pen, after all. We don't call this thing the freeform selection tool. It's the lasso tool. I don't call this thing the tool I never use to select anything inside Illustrator. It's called the magic wand tool. And even more to the point, do you call this guy the pan tool or the hand tool, which is why whatever poor design decisions have been made over the last few years, I'm going to continue to call these guys the arrow and pen tools here inside Illustrator. At lucky number 7 on my list of 10 things I hate about Illustrator is what I'm calling undo every little nudge. Works its way inside InDesign as well, not inside Photoshop. Better, in other words, inside Photoshop. The idea is that every time you press the arrow key, so if I select this text right here and press the down arrow key to nudge it down a little bit, and then I want to undo that, then I have to press the arrow key 3 times, so now I have to press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac 3 times in order to get that text back where it was. So just these teeny little nudges. By comparison, inside Photoshop, you can nudge your knuckles off, but all you have to do to get the thing back where it was, because, sometimes you're just hunting and packing, trying to figure out where things might look best. If you liked it where it was before, just press Control-Z, Command-Z once, and that's it. Let me demonstrate a little more, because I am going to share something that's useful here. I'll go ahead and bring back my classic pen tool because I miss it so much. And I'll zoom way in on it so we can see those nudges happen. And so if I press Control-K, Command-K on the Mac, I just want you to see for keyboard increment. That's where that keyboard shortcut comes from, by the way. Then you can see the keyboard increment is set to 1 point as by default. I'll go ahead and cancel out. Could be some other unit of measure if you're working elsewhere in the world. I'm going to press Control-C, Control-F, Command-C, Command-F on the Mac to copy and then paste in front, just so that we have a copy of the pen nib. I'll show you what I'm talking about. There it is right here. All right, but that one drag, right? If I wanted to undo it, I just press Control-Z or Command-C on the Mac once. However, if I start nudging things from the keyboard just by pressing various arrow keys, now I'm pressing the up arrow key, now I'm pressing Shift and Shift up arrow, that was Shift right arrow and then Shift up arrow for 10 times the 1 point increment, and then I press the arrow key by itself a bunch of times. I'm just trying to see if I like it where it is, and you can press and hold the arrow key. However, in order to undo that, now I have to press Control-Z, Command-Z on the Mac a bunch of times in order to undo all that stuff. And I can also press and hold that keyboard shortcut, by the way, in order to undo things like so. Or I can press Control-Shift-C or Command-Shift-Z on the Mac, pressing and holding it in order to redo that. So that's, that's a saving grace. But here's the real savior. That is to say, under the window menu, I'll go to the history, which didn't used to exist. And notice now here in the history panel that we have a bunch of states lamely labeled move. They should be called nudge, I think, just to disassociate themselves from legitimate drag movements. But notice how many of them there are. That should all be undoable in one operation, because otherwise you're wasting as much time as you were nudging to unnudge. However, now with history, you can go back to the state before you start nudging, which in my case is paste in front, in order to move that thing back into place. So I resent this feature. I don't think this is a way things should be organized. I think it should work like it does in Photoshop. We shouldn't have to undo every little nudge. However, remember that nowadays you've got the history panel. At number 6, we have I want my inline graphics, which I do. What in the world am I talking about? Well, here I am suddenly inside InDesign, and notice that I have some text along a path outline. What if I want to add a graphic along a path outline? For example, this guy right here, it's a circle filled with a gradient, so it looks like a little sphere. I'll press Control-C, Command-C on the Mac in order to copy it. Then I'll switch to the Type tool, select the letter O, because after all, it's a circle, and press Control-V, Command-V on the Mac. And just like that, I have a graphic along a path outline. That's what's known as inline graphics. Thing is, while it's great to have it inside InDesign, it belongs here inside Illustrator because, after all, Illustrator is a vector-based graphics program. So I'll go ahead and switch to this version of the graphic, and we clearly have whales along a path outline. So what gives, Deke? Why are you such a liar? Is what you're asking me, potentially. Well, I'll just go ahead and double-click inside this text and press Control-A or Command-A on the Mac to select all the whales. Why am I calling this text? Because if I go up to the Type menu and choose Glyphs to bring up the Glyphs panel, and I scroll down quite a few times, I will ultimately see some animals right here, including this chick and this frog and this crocodile and this snake and this dragon. Am I double-clicking too slowly? And this penguin and this bluebird and this octopus octopus and this blue whale and this ladybug and so forth. And that's because I'm working with this font that's included along with Illustrator and all the Adobe applications, actually, Emoji 1 Color, which is a full color font. That's cool. It's not really, this is Adobe's versions of all the emoji characters. And they're flat, of course, given, Adobe's ongoing absolute, obsession with flat graphics. Not as cool as Apple's. Those are the best emojis, in my opinion. And also, given my obsession with that undo thing, notice that you have to press Control-Z, Command-Z on the Mac in order to undo every single one of those things and regain access to the whales right there. So you can, if you want to, create graphics along a path outline as long as they are part of the Emoji 1 Color font. That's not what I want. What I want to do is take this guy, just another circle filled with a radial gradient, and attach it to a path outline like so. Well, clearly, that's possible because I've done it. Well, actually, not really. This is a workaround, and I am going to show you how I achieve the workaround because it's cool. But I also am going to show you what happens if you copy a sphere like that. Well, it's not a sphere, right? It's just a radial gradient inside of a circle. Copy it, Control-C, Command-C on the Mac, and select the Type tool by pressing the T key, and then click right there on that path outline and press Control-V or Command-V on the Mac. I'm not seeing anything. Let's press the Escape key. It's because the text is black against the black background, so I'll change it to white. What in the world is that right there? Let's make it bigger. Why don't we? And I'll change it to 48 points just so we can see that it's some XML code. Well, here's the deal. Here we are seeing that same code pasted into Notepad here on the PC, and you can see that it is an SVG definition of that little graphic. So that's what's going on there. That is not going to help us out at all. So I'm going to undo as many times as it takes to regain access to the original path outline. And let me show you what I did, because after all, I want to teach. I don't want to just curse at your darkness. And so I'll go up here to the stroke item. Let's change the color of the stroke to the third darkest blue. So notice there's a blue right there and two more blues in. This guy is what I'm going with. You can go your own way, of course. And I'll change the line weight to 60 points. Click on the word stroke. Select dashed line right there. And what I want is a 0-point dash that's fine and a 100-point gap. The problem is, the reason we're just seeing, I don't know if you can even make them out, these very thin vertical lines, is because we need to turn on round cap. Or at least I need to turn on round cap. All right, now what I'm going to do is press Control-C, Control-F, that would be Command-C, Command-F on the Mac, in order to paste a copy of that line right in front. And this time I'll change the line weight to 2 points. I'll change the color to cyan. Isn't that beautiful? And just because I want to nudge this guy, I'll do it using one of my favorite features in the software. Go to the Effect menu, choose Distort and Transform, followed by Transform, and I will enter 10 for the horizontal value. That's going to work out, isn't it? And negative 10 for the vertical value. Negative 10 moves things up. 10, by the way. Negative vertical is up. Positive vertical is down. That's just the way it works. Click OK. And now I'll just go ahead and marquee both of those lines because there's one on top of the other, and then I'll blend them. Another of my favorite features in the software, Blend Make, Control-Alt-B, Command-Option-B on the Mac is the keyboard shortcut. That is no good. So what I have to do is go back to the object menu, choose Blend, and then choose Blend Options, and I'm going to change the spacing value to 20, let's say, and I end up with these spheres along a path outline. That, of course, had nothing to do with creating graphics along a path outline or inline graphics in general, but it is still cool. Watch this. I'll double click on the item in order to enter the isolation mode so that we've isolated the blend. I'll select the top path now, and I'll press, wait, no, I didn't select just the top path. Let's try again. It should just be a top path. It is now. I'll press Shift up arrow a few times, maybe Shift right arrow like so. We end up with these cones. That's cool. Now I'll press the Escape key to escape out. I'll marquee these paths once again, the entire blend, to make sure it's selected. Return to the object menu, choose Blend Options right there, and I'll change the number of specified steps, let's say to 100. Ends up creating a nice smooth effect, and I'll click OK. All right, so that's really cool. That's because dynamic object blends inside Illustrator is so very cool. That's not what I want. That's what we have. That's great. What I want are inline graphics given to me, Adobe. At number 5, I have the spell checkerer. Well, let's say that I'm looking at that last word and something about it is bugging me. I'll just go ahead and press the T key to switch to the type tool, and I'll just double click on that word right there. I don't know what's wrong with it. I'm an absolute moron, but I want Illustrator to check it for me. So I'll go to the edit menu. I'll choose this command right there, spelling, and choose check spelling, which has a keyboard shortcut. This is easily the worst command with a keyboard shortcut in Illustrator, and it doesn't spell check the word. Now, I have to say, I almost did this. I almost added this feature to my 10 things I hate about Photoshop list, but the thing is, in Photoshop, it will at least check the word. It'll check the selected word before it moves on in its clunky manner. In Illustrator, it doesn't. It just sits there and goes, well, would you like to spell check? Or what are we doing, fella? So I have to hit start in order to get the process started. And then it just leaves. It doesn't check that word. It goes to the word about, which is spelled just fine. Its problem is that it's the beginning of a sentence. Well, that's who would begin a sentence with the word about? Well, anyway, you'd have to twirl this options open and turn off this checkbox. Not worth it. So I'm just going to click ignore because there's not that much text in this document. Now it moves on to Deke. So I've only been using these applications for 35 years or something, and Adobe's dictionary doesn't know my name. That's fine. It's unusual, but it also has problems with my last name. It doesn't like the D at the very end. All right, now you're really trying my patience. And then finally, it finds it. Oh, it notices the word checker is not right. So I'll just change it and I'll click done so that I'm done. And I hit the escape key. And now everything is fixed. And I'll just go ahead and send this document off on its merry way. Oh, wait, it still has a typo. At number 4, we have undo, history, and revert. Well, actually, that's not a great name for this slide. I'm going to change it, actually, on the fly right here. I'm a terrible typer, I should say that. Undo, and then I'll hit Shift Return so that I'm entering a soft return right there. I can't undo revert here inside Illustrator. You can in Photoshop. I'm just going to say that, which is like one of the most awesome things in Photoshop. Should have been on my 10 things I love about the software list. Didn't get around to it, but anyway. In this program, you can't. So I just want to go up to the window menu and show you the history panel for a moment. And we can see that I did some typing. All right. And I can move things around if it'll pay attention to me. And then I'll move it back to a different location, whatever, and I'll nudge it as well. We saw how much fun that is. Anyway, I could go back to the top here and click on the open state, and that'll take me back to the text the way it looked before. But maybe I'm well into the process now, and what I want to do is just choose revert, because I don't know how many times you do this, but you're just like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. Let's check what I had before. I'll go up to the file menu, and I'll choose the revert command. In Photoshop, it just reverts. It doesn't give you this alarming alert message because there is no point to it. But in Illustrator, it says, hey, do you really want to revert this? Because reverting will lose your current changes. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think I do. Click revert. Well, look, it just wiped out the history panel. And so there's no way to get back to the stuff I made, the changes I made, that is. And up here in the edit menu, I can't undo. Honestly, this can't be rocket science. Just let me undo a revert here inside Illustrator. At number 3, we have inaccurate centers, by which I mean center points, center alignment, centering in general. It's a real problem, as you're about to see, and it's as old as time. It's always been this way in Illustrator. I actually think it's high time it got fixed, and I will show you a solution. All right, so here we have a circle. I'll go ahead and click on it to select it. Notice it has a center point. Rectangles and circles automatically get center points in Illustrator, and they're accurate because these are symmetrical shapes. But what happens if your shape does not have exact symmetry? For example, I'm going to draw a star. So I'll go ahead and grab the star tool right there. And just to make sure everything's aligned, I'll go to the view menu and make sure my smart guides are turned on. They are. That's good. And so I'll drag from the center because the star tool draws from the center automatically. And as I draw, notice I've got a 5-pointed star. It's important that I do. You want an odd number of points. If you have an even number, that'll ruin the experiment because then you have absolute symmetry. And so I'll press the down arrow key in this case, reduce the number of points to 5. And then I'll snap into alignment with the top of the circle like so. I want my opposite segments to be in line with each other, to be perfectly aligned. So I'll press and hold the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac. And then we have perfect alignment, as is true for the stars of most flags, including the United States. So anyway, there we go. Now I'll change its color to orange. Let's say this light shade of orange. Now, notice that it does not have a center point. Just the only ones that do automatically are rectangles and ellipses. And so what I'm going to do is press the V key to switch back to my black arrow tool. And I'll just drag this guy off to the side a little bit. I can give it a center point by going to the window menu and choosing the attributes command, which brings up this teeny weeny little panel here. And you may have to like expand it like so, and then you've got this center point option right here, show center, and it does this. There's the center. No, that's not the center. That's not the center at all, as it just so happens. That's quite high in the center. So why is it showing me this being the center? Well, if I were to switch to the rectangle tool right here, and I were to Alt drag or Option drag on a Mac to create the center from the shape that is from the center outward, notice that it snaps into alignment with the star, and I'll change its color right here to, let's just say green, and I'll send it back in back of the star. And you can see that's why, because the bounding box for the star has a center at this location, which is sloppy. That's absolute sloppiness. That's like has nothing to do with the star itself. So this is wrong. Watch it be so wrong. I'll press Control Y, Command Y in a Mac just to switch to the outline mode for a moment. You know that trick. And I'll drag this guy by the center point so it snaps into alignment with the center of the circle, just so that we're seeing things the way they are. And I'll press Control Y or Command Y again to switch back to the preview mode. It's just that you can see those center points in the outline mode. And notice it is by no means centered. And then you might say, well, Deke, that can't possibly have anything to do with center alignment. That's just a weird fluke, right? Well, watch this. Shift click on the circle, click again on the circle to make sure it's the key object. Go up here and hit horizontal line center, and then this other one, vertical line center. Sure enough, it's off center, because Illustrator doesn't see the center of the shape. It sees the center of the bounding box. It's a problem. That is a problem. Watch this. It gets even more interesting. You would think, okay, now that it has a center point, the center point will be fixed, right? At least it'll be fixed at this wrong location. No, I'm going to switch to the rotate tool right here. And it sees, notice it puts its little origin point right there at the center, which is not the center. And so you can't rely on center points with shapes that aren't exactly symmetrical. And so I'll press the Enter key, Return key on the Mac, just to bring up the rotate dialog box. And I'll change this guy to 22.5 degrees, just because it's half of 45 degrees. It's just a good one to show you. See how the center point moved? It moved from here to here. It just did that. That's cool. That's really super cool. And all right, so now if I try to center again, I could do that trick where I drag the center point and match it to this center point. Well, it's easier if I can see them both. Control Y, Command Y in a Mac. Drag it into location here. Control Y, Command Y in a Mac. You might say, well, that's closer anyway. That's not as far off as it was before. Who cares? It's off. Just the worst thing in Illustrator is something's just a little bit off. We'll come to that in the next one. Just a moment. Look forward to that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring back my attributes panel. It just happens to be here. And, well, you know what? I'll leave the center point on for a moment so I can show you how to get a good center point. I'll press Control-C, Control-F, Command-C, Command-F, copy, paste in front. Then I'll go to the object menu with this new shape in front, path, and we want average right here. And you want to average both. Click OK, and that averages all the points to the actual center point. Isn't that a beautiful thing? That's basically the geographical center, if you will, if I have any idea what that means. Now, I'm going to press the A key to switch to the white arrow tool. I just want 1 point. That's a bunch of points smushed together. I'm going to shift click, so 1 point is deselected, and then press the backspace key to get rid of the other one. So I have just 1 point in the center there. And then I'll shift click on the star, and I'll combine them into a single compound path like so. And so now we have a compound path. Now we don't need that erroneous center point. Don't show center because you're wrong, Illustrator. Hide attributes panel. And now I still can't use auto alignment. I can't use the align functions because they'll still mess up. But I can press Control Y, Command Y in the Mac, and drag this guy until it snaps into alignment, the center point right there, the new center point, the accurate one, till it snaps into alignment with the circle, and we have this effect here. And that works even, by the way, if the star is upright. So I'll press the R key to switch back to the rotate tool. I won't accept this guy. I'll Alt or Option click on the accurate center point right there, and I'll change this guy to negative 22.5 degrees. Click OK, and we now have an upright shape. What we need is for that to be just regular old standard behavior. Please, Adobe, it'd be great if we had accurate center points here inside Illustrator. All right, here's one that I think we can all agree on. Maybe for most of you it'd be the number one thing you hate about Illustrator, but unreliable snapping. Points, anchor points, ought to just snap into alignment with each other. That's it. The end. That's all we ask, right? At the very least, we need that. I was at a conference about 5-6 years ago, and there were some Illustrator reps from Adobe on stage, and somebody asked, hey, when are you going to fix the fact that Illustrator doesn't snap properly? Even with, by the way, I want to make it clear, I've got smart guides turned on. So that's supposed to be the ultimate remedy, right? And a person, they're just so glib. It was like, well, we're aware that's a problem. Are you aware it's a devastating problem that leaves egg on our collective faces? Check this out. Okay, this may be like a special case, but basically, a few months ago, right, I was talking about 3D in Illustrator, and the one thing Illustrator doesn't let you do is take a 3D object and put more 3D on top of it, because after all, that would take the 3D object and project it into 4D space, and then you'd have a tesseract. So I wanted to draw this tesseract, which I had to do by hand, right, by drawing all these little connective lines right here with the line tool. And so I'll press Control and Spacebar, that's Command and Spacebar on the Mac, and go ahead and drag to zoom in like so. And notice this right here. Is this aligning properly? Doesn't look like it is. I'll press Control Y, Command Y on the Mac in order to switch to the outline mode. Sure enough, it's off. That I'm off alignment right there. And if I switch over here, oh, these are totally off as well. And yet I drew this with smart guides turned on, and I'm sure you appreciate I'm pretty good at this stuff. All right, let me show you what went wrong in this case, in this specific case, so that at least when you're banging your head against the monitor, just wondering why in the world you can't get things to snap, you'll think of this one. All right, so I'll go ahead. This is just the 3D, what wants to be the 3D object right here in the 3D object layer. I'll go ahead and click on it to make sure it's selected. My smart guides are turned on, as you can see, with the flashing and everything. And so I'll go ahead and grab the good old line segment tool right here. And then I will drag from here, from this anchor point. It's saying the word anchor. That tells me snappage is occurring. Go to here. Anchor, right? Path shows you that you're snapping into alignment with the segment, whereas anchor shows you that you're snapping into alignment with an anchor point. Yay. So must have done that, right? Must have worked. Let's go ahead and zoom on in so that we can see. Press Control Y, Command Y on the Mac. That's off. That's exactly the kind of thing we can't have, Adobe. The end. It's a deal breaker. It makes us look like fools, like we don't know what we're doing. What's the problem? Well, there is a problem in this case. There is something at work. Go to the View menu. Many of you know this, right? Snap to Pixel. Snap to Pixel is on by default these days. Even if you create a print document, a CMYK print document, Snap to Pixel is turned on. That can't possibly be the default setting, Adobe. It results in what we're seeing right here. I snapped to the pixel. The smart guide said I was snapping to the anchor point, and I snapped to the pixel instead. There was no warning. Where's the alert message telling me that, oh, hey, just so that I have a little okay, it should read, sorry about that. I totally lied about aligning to the anchor point. Sincerely yours, Illustrator. And you click OK, and then you try to figure out what the problem is. It's Snap to Pixel in this case. All right, because it's just so simple, right? I'll deselect that guy, and I'll just go ahead and zoom out because it looks fine from here. And now drag it again, anchor to anchor, right? Got the word anchor, so that should be accurate, right? And now I'll go ahead and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in for as long as I want. Here I am at 64,000%. That's the maximum zoom level, and I can see that I have absolute alignment. And so one of the problems you may occur out there, my dear friends, is that when you can't get snapping to work, check if snap to pixel, which you almost never want turned on, is turned on by default. All right, now at this point you may wonder what in the world I could hate more than unreliable snapping. That seems pretty much like the height of problems inside Illustrator. Well, the one thing I hate more is the Essentials workspace. That workspace that comes up the first time you ever launch Illustrator, specifically if you launch it without, carrying over preferences, specifically the properties panel, which I wish just didn't even exist because it's so huge and it blocks more important panels. So let's discuss the important panels. We have the Tools panel over here on the left-hand side of the screen. I call it the toolbox. Adobe calls it the toolbar. It's not a toolbar because it's not horizontal. That's just the way it is, but whatever. Then, speaking of bars, we have the control panel up here at the top of the screen. Absolutely essential to getting work done. And then we have the layers panel. You got to have that. Otherwise, how are you seeing your layers? Because you're switching between those all the time. And then I also will admit that I like having the swatches panel up on screen. That's it. The other panels can be squished in between or over here as side panels and so forth. All right, but that's not the way that Illustrator sees it these days. So I'll just go ahead and switch to Essentials. Once again, that is the workspace. This is the default workspace first time you launch a program, like on a new machine or something like that, without carrying over preferences. And by the way, it's set to properties. I'll just go ahead and choose Reset Essentials so that we can see it's the properties panel that's up on screen. Now, the properties panel replaces the control panel, that horizontal control panel up at the top of the screen. It has the same options. The only time it offers different options are now, when I have the black arrow tool active and nothing selected. But if I click on some text, for example, then it offers some text features that I would see in the control panel. And so all that's happening here is it's taking up more room and it's blocking the layers panel. So you're faced with this proposition of either looking at the properties panel or looking at the layers panel, not both. Now, what I have people do at the very least, because it's impossible to get any work done in this environment. Also, by the way, we're missing a bunch of tools. They aren't the best tools that we're missing, but like the Live Paint tool we're missing. Oh, that was a pretty good tool, I think, and it's not available in this curtailed toolbox over here. And so what you got to do at the very least, right, is switch to Essentials Classic, because now you get the properties panel and its duplicate, the control panel. Now, the thing about the control panel is not only is it trying to offer everything the properties panel does, it's just not labeled to the same extent. You have to hover over this to figure out it's a line left. Well, you have to do that down here too. So it's not like everything is exactly labeled, or it's not like this is any more clear. Adobe swears that new users love this panel. I don't know. I think they could pretty quickly learn this one, quite frankly. And the properties panel takes up 4 times as much room on screen. And hey, now it's not even blocking the layers panel, it's blocking the libraries panel, because the layers panel has been thrown over here as a sub panel. What? That's crazy. So here's not crazy. This is what you do if you're not a crazy person. You take the properties panel and you close it and you get rid of it. And then you take the layers panel and you put it over here and you move it over so that it's the primary panel before libraries. And then if you want artboards, sure, why not have artboards, I say. And then asset to export right there. Great idea for a panel, needed sometimes. Some of you need it more than others, but it doesn't need to be part of the panels that are always on screen because it takes up a lot of room. So bring it up when you want it. And then from that point on, I would say, gosh, I would grab the appearance panel because I love that panel, as you may recall from 10 things I love about Illustrator. And then I like to move it over right here. And then I like to bring up the swatches panel right there and move it to the top up there so that I'm always seeing my swatches, because I like to see my swatches. And then I make these things a little wider and I switch back to layers. You can switch back and forth between layers and appearance. You don't need to see those two panels at the same time. And then you can decide what other panels you love. Like here's a good panel group, I think, right here. I'll make it larger. Stroke gradient transparency. I like those guys, so I'll move them over in between like so, because stroke barely takes up any room unless you want to expand it. Then you can switch to your gradient panel. It takes up a bunch of room, and then you can switch back to the stroke panel, and so on and so forth. And then what you do is you go up here to the workspaces and you save your workspace by choosing new workspace. I already got one that I call one-on-one, and it's totally rad, and it works for me like crazy, and it doesn't involve the properties panel, which, by the way, as I was saying, just duplicates a bunch of stuff you can see much more easily and in a much more condensed fashion up here at the top of the screen in the control panel. And that is why I do not like either the Essentials workspace or the properties panel here inside Illustrator. What'd you think of my list? Agree? Disagree? What'd I miss? Comment down below. Feel free to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now, thing is, after all that hating, I still have one more big thing I hate. You know how when you create a new document, you basically have to start over from scratch with the swatches and the brushes and the layers, panel, thumbnail sizes? I tell you how to avoid all that on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/DeekNow. And go to Deek.com, create a free account, and sign up for my newsletter. I'm Deke McClelland. This is Deek Now.